All right, let's talk about something that trips up so many people working in the cloud. It's this critical and honestly often really confusing question of who's responsible for what when it comes to security. So let's just dive right in and clear this up.
Okay, just picture this. It's the nightmare scenario, right? A security breach happens. Alarms are blaring, data's at risk, and the first question isn't just, how did this happen, but who's on the hook for this? Is it you, your team, or is it that giant cloud provider you pay a fortune to every single month?
And here's the really scary part. The answer is almost never simple. In the cloud, the real danger isn't some super sophisticated hacker, it's ambiguity. It's just assuming that someone else is handling a piece of security. And those little assumptions, well, they can lead to absolutely devastating problems. We need clarity. So how do we get that clarity? How do we get rid of the guesswork? Well, we have to draw a line. And that's exactly what this foundational concept is all about. It's called the shared responsibility model, and it's designed to cut right through all that confusion. So what is it? Honestly, the name kind of gives it away. It's a framework. Think of it like a deal, a partnership. It clearly lays out what the cloud provider is responsible for securing and what you, as the customer, are responsible for securing. No gray areas.
My absolute favorite way to think about this is the apartment analogy. It just clicks. Imagine your cloud provider is your landlord. Their job is to secure the entire apartment building. The main entrance, the physical structure, the shared utilities. But you're the tenant. You are responsible for what happens inside your own apartment. You have to lock your door. You decide who gets a spare key. The landlord secures the infrastructure. You secure everything you put on it.
Now that sounds pretty straightforward, right? Landlord, tenant, got it. But it gets a little more complicated, because most of us don't just live in one building anymore. We're in a multi-cloud world, using AWS, Azure, GCP, and while that landlord-tenant idea is the same everywhere, the actual lease agreement, the fine print, can be very, very different depending on where you are.
And this is so important. A one-size-fits-all security approach across different clouds is just dangerous. You can't just copy-paste your security plan from AWS and assume it's going to work perfectly on Azure. Those subtle differences in where they draw that line of responsibility, that's exactly where the security gaps pop up.
It's actually pretty fascinating when you look at the language they each use, because it tells you a lot about their philosophy. So AWS is famous for this really hard line. They handle security of the cloud, you handle security in the cloud. Super clear. Then you've got Azure, which gets way more granular. That line of responsibility actually moves depending on if you're using infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service. And Google Cloud, they talk about a shared fate, which signals a more collaborative approach, with a heavy emphasis on making things secure by default. And these aren't just marketing terms, they reflect real differences in how things work.
Okay, so with all these different rules and nuances, how in the world do you stay in control? You need a blueprint, a simple, repeatable process you can use on every single project, no matter which cloud you're on. And it really boils down to asking 3 key questions, every single time.
And here they are, 3 pillars that cover the vast majority of cloud security failures: data, access, and configuration. Seriously, think of this as your pre-flight checklist. Before you deploy anything new, you have to have clear, explicit answers for these 3 areas.
First step, the data itself, your crown jewels. You have to know where it actually lives. Who's responsible for encrypting it when it's just sitting there on a disk or at rest? And what about when it's moving across the network, in transit? A lot of people don't realize that those can be 2 totally separate responsibilities, and just assuming the provider handles both by default is a huge mistake. Number 2 is access. Let's go back to our analogy. Who has the keys to your apartment? This is all about identity and access management, or IAM. And it isn't just about who can get in, it's about what their key can open. Are you handing out master keys when all someone really needs is access to a single closet? Every overly permissive account is just an open door waiting for an attack. And finally, and oh boy, this is a big one, configuration. The cloud lets you build things incredibly fast, but it also lets you misconfigure them just as fast. We're talking about questions like, who is setting up the firewall rules? Who is double-checking that a storage bucket isn't accidentally open to the entire internet? So many breaches you read about come down to this one simple thing. A service was just left on its default, insecure setting. The question has to be, whose job is it to harden everything?
So all of this brings us to the core mandate. Running through this blueprint isn't just a nice-to-have security practice. If you are building anything in the cloud, this is a fundamental part of your professional responsibility.
If you only take one thing away from all this, please let it be this. Every time you find yourself thinking, I assume the provider handles that, or I assume the other team secured this, you are creating a potential security gap. Assumption is the enemy. Period.
Your job, and I don't care if you're an architect, an engineer, or a manager, is to be the official assumption killer on your team. You have to be the person who takes those fuzzy, unspoken beliefs and turns them into clear, documented, explicit agreements that everyone understands. Write it down.
So I'll leave you with this one final thought to take back to your team. Look at your current projects. Is your division of responsibility? Who handles data? Who handles access? Who handles configuration? Is it actually documented somewhere? Is it a clear blueprint a new hire could understand on day one? Or is it just kind of floating around as a dangerous, unspoken assumption? The answer to that question could be the difference between a secure system and your next major breach.